My friends, good day. In general aviation, there are more and more avoidable accidents. I blame the commercialization of aviation and especially training. The transmission belt of knowledge and experience is broken. When I was a teenager and I went to the flying club, there was a spirit of camaraderie. That means that older, experienced pilots, sometimes even retired, would come and give their time. They gave their time for free and they supported us, whether on the ground or in flight, and they passed on their knowledge to the new generation. They felt that duty. Today, that model has been largely destroyed. Let me give you an example. 2 years ago, I was at an aero club in the United Kingdom and I was about to fly in a region I didn't know very well. And then I asked an instructor who was there if he could give me a briefing. That's normal. It's common to have a briefing with the map. There was a map on the wall and I wanted us to discuss it because there were prohibited areas, noise restricted zones, areas restricted at certain times of the day, but not others, obstacles, all that. I wanted someone from the area to tell me about it. So he did talk to me about it for about 15 minutes. And later I received a bill for 60 euros. So actually, we can't have any transmission anymore. And in those flying clubs today, when a young person arrives and they're passionate, they want to learn, they're curious and open minded. Well, what we do is we tell them for the exams, I'll give you a website. There are multiple choice questions. You'll pay a fee and they'll give you access to the questions. For a month, you memorize everything and then afterwards, you'll go take the exam. I mean, that slowly turns pilots into people who just do cramming, who know how to spot the wrong answer or the right answer in a given list like this. And then in the end, we see extremely avoidable accidents that shouldn't happen without going off on a tangent. We're going to July 28, 2017 in Southern California at Big Bear Airport. It has a particular feature. It's at a high altitude, 6,700 feet. When you see that on a chart, 6,700 feet, it commands respect. It's a very high airfield. You immediately think of what's called density altitude. Density altitude isn't necessarily what's written on a chart. It's an altitude that varies from hour to hour depending on certain factors. So the factors are, of course, altitude, but also sea level pressure. That day, what we call the QNH, the lower it is, the higher the density altitude. Temperature is the most decisive factor. The hotter it is, the higher it gets, and of course, humidity. But generally, we calculate using pressure and temperature. That's what the wings experience, that's what the engine experiences. And when you have a high density altitude, you can find yourself in a situation where you exceed your aircraft's engine ceiling. That means you don't have enough power to take off or to fly, and especially on naturally aspirated engines. I'm not talking about turbo engines or turbines. I'm talking about engines that have pistons and a carburetor. And then they suck in air. And well, when the air is not very dense, they're not going to suck in much. So obviously their power will drop a lot. Add to that the fact that the wings won't have enough air, nor will the propeller, which won't find enough air to grip. Even humans may have trouble breathing under certain conditions. And so obviously you see the danger that's going to materialize. It's July 28th. We're in the middle of summer. There's a man in his 30s, a former soldier who just left the United States Air Force. He mostly flew helicopters. He's more of a helicopter pilot than a plane pilot. He flew the utility helicopter, 60 twin turbines, so a pretty powerful helicopter. It's not a helicopter where you feel limited in power or held back. That can lead to bad habits. And now he's dating a woman who's 28 years old. She's a police officer by profession. And then he's going to take her to Big Bear, actually, on the 28th. That's it, because he has a plan in mind. So once he lands, he parks the plane, he gets out. The plane is a Cessna 172 for your information, equipped with a Lycoming 4-cylinder 160 horsepower engine. Very important for the story that follows. Well, he gets out of the plane like that, and then at that moment, he gets down on one knee, takes out a ring. He's going to propose, as they say. The young woman is over the moon. She's happy. She says yes. Everyone applauds, and she shows off her ring on social media. Everything is perfect in the best of all worlds. He spends the night at Big Bear, and then the next day they have to leave. So they return to the airport around 2 p.m. That means we're at a time when it's really intense. It's really the hottest moment of the day. Now, I would like to issue a warning. I would like to tell you in no uncertain terms, never bring back a plane, a blimp, a helicopter, a missile, God forbid, at a wedding, birthday, engagement, bar mitzvah, or any family occasion. It may sound said like that in the tropics in Africa, like a superstition, but be careful. Superstitions, my friends, carry wisdom that is rooted in real values. Sometimes we can even have scientific foundations for certain things that we would otherwise consider superstition. I'm just giving you the reason why I said these things. It's because when you have to make a decision in aviation, well, you have to make it calmly, with a clear head, as they say. But when you have a particular family situation or a celebration or something else, we're driven by our emotions. Emotion will play a role. The weight of emotion will be very high, even though we are human, and emotion is part of our decision-making process 100% of the time. But be careful, in certain situations in life, certain phases of life, emotion is there. Let me give you an example. Suppose I'm in love with a woman. So I get down on my knees, I propose, I give her a ring and all that. She's happy, she says yes. And tonight I managed to book a table at an amazing Michelin restaurant. Usually it's booked 6 months ahead, but this time a friend helped me get a table. I'm taking her there. By surprise, let's say I check the weather now, and there's a significant meteorological information saying there are bad weather conditions along the route. Or if when I start the engine, it makes a noise, a strange noise, something unusual. What do? Will I have the courage? Will I have the courage while being driven by emotions, while being on cloud nine? And her too, will I have the courage to look her straight in the eyes and say, listen, my darling, behind the airport there's a Travelodge. We're going to spend the night at that Travelodge to eat. Across the street there's a pub, they make burgers, we're going to eat there. Honestly, how many people do you know who are capable of doing that? You see? Still, the Travelodge beds might be a bit hard, but they're less hard than the steel drawers at the medical examiner's office. Plus, the tags on the luxury column are very uncomfortable, but that's the reality we're talking about. Those are the real facts. We have people who are experiencing moments of happiness, and then there's an ordinary ambulance parked behind the medical examiner's office for, once again, avoidable reasons. I'm not even talking about an accident where you say it's an act of God, where you honestly think it was unavoidable. No, we're really talking about a stupid accident. You know, that day, Big Bear, when they arrived at 2 p.m., the density altitude was 9,300 feet, 9,300 feet. I had it checked. You wouldn't take off an Airbus at 2 p.m. You wouldn't take off a Boeing 737-800. It's very high. It's very hot. You're at altitude. You take off. You're going to die. And actually, the guy, all happy and cheerful, gets into the plane and brings his sweetheart on board. As if that wasn't bad enough, he adds 30 kilos of luggage. That's quickly a suitcase, a backpack, all that. It adds up fast. 30 kilos of luggage. Start the Cessna 172. They're heading toward runway 08. They're lining up on said runway. And then he throttles up like that and pulls back on the stick to take off. But when he pulls back on the stick, he does it a bit abruptly. Surveillance cameras captured the moment he takes off, showing the plane pitched up significantly. It's estimated that he had about 8-9 degrees of pitch up, and roughly speaking, the variometer showed he was climbing at about 850 feet per minute. 850 feet per minute is huge for a Cessna 172. Even at sea level, I wouldn't want the variometer needle going toward 1,000. I prefer it to be closer to 500. And so if you're at Big Bear at 2 p.m., honestly, if you have a climb rate of 100 feet per minute, that's already good. And still, in any case, he's going to be aggressive. So he'll take off. He climbs about 100 feet. According to National Transportation Safety Board analysis of surveillance footage, this is what's happening. He takes off at about 60 knots, and when he's at 100 feet, he's at 49 knots. So clearly, we're in a situation where the plane is lacking in energy. So we're probably in a situation where he's trying to fly above his engine's ceiling, which means the engine just doesn't have enough power. And I'll add something else for you. The detail that kills, literally, is that very often pilots who aren't used to mountain waves, when they take off with the red mixture lever pushed all the way forward. That means they've got the mixture fully rich. The problem with the mixture is that it's not very efficient when you have very little air, but you have a lot of fuel coming in. You have what's called a too rich mixture, and you lose even more power, so you lose some because the mixture is too rich, and you lose some as well. On the other hand, because of the altitude, the density doesn't provide enough air to the engine, and also because the propeller doesn't have enough air to grip onto. So you see there's a buildup that becomes extremely dangerous. And so it goes from 60 knots at ground level at the moment it takes off to 49 knots when it's at 100 feet, so 49 knots. You have the airspeed indicator needle, which is almost vertical. The plane is pitched up a lot, and the control stick is pulled all the way back. You feel it in your gut, literally, and the stall warning alarm is going off non-stop. So these are clearly not the initial conditions from which you're going to thrive. People on the ground see the plane and realize something is wrong. So among themselves, they automatically start saying, lower the nose of the plane, lower the nose of the plane, because that's what they expect to do. Because our pilot here has entered the area we call the second regime, sometimes even called control reversal. It's an area where the plane is extremely nose up and it needs an enormous amount of power just to stay in the air. And why do we call it control reversal? Because if you want to climb, it's not about pulling more on the stick, but on the contrary, you have to let the stick move forward a little, just a little, not push. Because if you push the stick, honestly, from this situation, you'll dive straight toward the ground. You lose lift pretty quickly, but by pushing the stick slightly, it allows the plane to accelerate a bit, going from 49 knots maybe to 55, push a bit more, push again, and then you start to climb. And don't ask too much of it. Don't ask for 850 feet per minute. But here, they're quite shocked to see this plane that seems, according to witnesses, to be hanging by its propeller. So very nose up and hanging by its propeller. So, even worse, when he reaches the end of runway 08, what does he do? He starts a 90-degree turn. But the wings, when you're in a situation where you can see it's barely holding on, you have to keep the wings level. That's the most important thing. The wings must stay level, because if you tilt them, you're going to add load factor to the wings. To keep us in the air, all things being equal, they have to provide even more lift, but at that point, those wings are at the end of their life. So by making a turn, he's making the situation worse. Why did he do it? Because in the Big Bear departure procedure on runway 08, pay attention, it's written there, well, they put safety first in big letters, safety above all. Make as little noise as possible, because there are noise abatement zones over there. It happens very often. Today, I almost want to say that the areas around airports are plagued by noise abatement zones, in the sense that you take off and then right in front, there are people who bought homes. They set up microphones, record, get it certified by a bailiff, and send registered letters to the control tower. That's it. If you fly over them during a barbecue, they'll call the control tower within 5 minutes. But be careful, that's not a reason to take safety risks. I mean, if we have to fly over their heads, we fly over their heads. But he's going to follow the procedure. So he'll turn, make a first right turn, and he'll get through it. It's still a miracle. We just saw one. He keeps going, and the procedure says there's a second right turn. So what is he going to do? Well, he's going to turn a second time, so he's going to turn a second time. And now, clearly, he's in a plane that's lacking energy. It's too heavy. It's pitched up too much. He's in the second regime. His angle of attack is at its maximum. He's literally on the verge of stalling. This involves two 90-degree turns, which is not at all an appropriate approach for the situation. So what people see is suddenly they see this aircraft stall, which means that at some point it literally falls from the sky. The problem is that if you feel like you've taken off, it doesn't have enough power to stay in the air. Well, since we're doomed anyway, what we do is accept the decree of providence and go with the plane. we say to ourselves, well, I'm going to land. Over there, there's a field, there's a landfill, there's a highway. It doesn't matter. We're going to land it. We're going to crash, but we'll have our chances. The problem is that by insisting against the laws of physics, we no longer have any opportunity to make it out. So he kept holding the stick, kept holding the stick. What happens is that the plane stalls, and when it stalls, it does whatever it wants. The moment it stalls, it pitches down so the nose drops below the horizon quite abruptly. And then the next stop is the trees. That's clear. So here, same thing. He goes toward the ground, goes through the curtain of trees, and then he hits the ground directly at an angle. When we look at the images, we're basically talking about 30 to 45 degrees. It's not something you can survive, seatbelt or not. It doesn't forgive at all. Especially since here, once again, we're in thin air. So when you fall, you really fall hard. And so when the authorities arrive, when the officials come, they will find that this poor couple, they're dead. They died in this plane. And they will end up, as I told you at the beginning of the video, at the medical examiner's office, even though they had their whole lives ahead of them and they died. Not even because of an accident that was honestly extremely unlikely, something no one could have ever predicted. No, my friends, no. I even think that when I'm old, I'll go live near a high altitude airport. And then what I'll do in the summer is put a kettle near the runway, a kettle with soup, coffee, or tea, and some cookies. And when I see pilots who want to take off in such high density altitude conditions like that, well, I'll invite them to talk about themselves, talk about life, about their family, their childhood, how they see things, just to try to delay them so they don't take off. A saintly man once did that in Lausanne at Bessieres Bridge, which is the city's highest bridge for those familiar with the reference. He did that at Christmas in his little shack with his soup and saved several lives. But honestly, that's it. Once again, it's the breakdown of the transmission belt that causes this. And maybe that's also why, for this reason, this channel exists. So thank you, my friends, for following along until now. Let me remind you about my book, The Titan. It's a story with a carbon fiber sub, a submersible that wants to go visit the Titanic. He also ignored the laws of physics and he had no excuses. Because for Stockton Rush, the drive belt wasn't broken in the sense that he came out of Princeton, he came out of the Ivy League. He has no excuses regarding the laws of physics. He knew them and decided to go against them. He paid the ultimate price, and so did his clients. Not very far from the Titanic. The book is available on Amazon. Thanks again to those who support by subscribing. There are exclusive videos, and also to those who subscribe on Patreon. And we'll see each other in the next video. See you very soon.